Hello and welcome back to the Podium Podcast. And today we're going to be talking about politics in F1. Karen, what do you think about politics in F1? Do you think they've changed a lot over the past years?
Yeah, so hi guys, welcome back. Yeah, so I think they have quite a lot. I think that's one of the problems F1 has had for a long time now. I would say it really started to affect Formula One after the 2000s. I would say like beginning of 2010 really started to affect F1. And we're going to go into detail today about how it's affected F1 and what's improved, but more importantly, um, the bad things that have come from that, because I think, to be honest, there's more, and I think you'll agree there's more bad than good.
Yeah, in today's world, it's become more commercialized F1, I think, also from TVs and sponsorships. And we'll get onto that later. But well, let's talk about the people who brought on really the politics. Ross Brawn.
Yeah.
Well, used to be head of Brawn GP, a 100% win record team, which is only team to do that in history. But yeah, Ross Brawn, founder, not founder, but manager of F1. He's been signing deals with Liberty Media, Netflix. Do you think he brought it upon himself? I think I do.
Well, initially I did, and I think it's quite easy to blame him, but at the same time, I think there are people above him, in that the shareholders and the people that own F1 will have a say more than him. And it's like a lot of CEOs, they will have to do what the owners want them to do. So I think whilst he carries them out, they may not be his orders. And because he's been in F1 for a long time, working for Ferrari and then going to his own team. I think um, I don't think he's like that, and I don't think that's what he wanted to do. But I think he's done a good job at doing what the owners have wanted him to do. Um, so yeah, I used to think that he was, to be honest, but I think there's more to it than that.
For me, I think Ross Brawn really took it on himself. When he signed that deal with Liberty Media, he may have not known that Liberty Media were going to really, really hammer in the commercialization with Netflix and more YouTube and Instagram content. So I think personally he brought it up on himself. So yeah, anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was kind of more forced to do it, and this is the problem with these politics, and because there's now a lot of money in Formula One, um, it's very easy to force people to do it. It's almost corrupt, because you could people get paid off, probably similar to what happened a bit with Michael Massey. You could say that he was kind of forced to make that decision, and apparently he was also doing lots and lots of jobs at once, and he had too much on his plate, and he could have easily made a silly mistake. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, talking about Michael Massey at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, it's been released in the last couple of days that he's been told to execute orders Red Bull told them to
Yeah.
do, which I think his name's Jonathan Wheatley. I'm not too sure, but yeah, he was saying on the team radio, please put in please let lapped cars overtake Hamilton and Verstappen, and Michael Massey, as soon as he told them to do it, he did it. And so I don't know why it's taking this long for it to be, discovered. But yeah, it also shows that there is a lot of money. Red Bull could be bribing. You never know with F1 these days.
Yeah, that's true. You really don't know. There's so much money and so much politics. It's not straightforward, and it's difficult to see through it, really.
For me, I think the sad reality nowadays is that I think Formula One's going to be turning into more with Liberty Media coming in. These American sports like NBA and basketball, when they have specialized breaks just for between the game, just for adverts.
Yeah.
And with Liberty Media becoming American, imagine, but in the middle of the race, everyone comes into the pits just for adverts. It'd just be
Yeah,
crazy.
I know. Yeah, it would. And to be honest, I don't think F1's needed that, because F1 was already a big sport. Yes, it's gotten bigger, but I don't think it needed really to get much bigger. It's not, people still watched it. F1 drivers still made a lot of money, they didn't, it wasn't their part-time job. They still made plenty of money. It's not a small sport. It was never a small sport like netball or something where they needed money so that they could play full time or whatever. Um, this is just purely because they want to make even more, and you could say it's greedy.
I mean, Liberty Media, it's a sad, but Liberty Media, when they signed a contract with Ross Brawn, only wanted one thing, which is money. They wanted a profit.
Yeah.
Now, however, there is a new FIA president, which is going to be the head of all motorsport FIA. Sorry if I mess up his name, but Mohammed Ben Sulayem. I think his dad was a rallycross driver. Do you think he's going to do wonders, or do you think he's going to do terrible decisions with FIA?
Um, I don't know. Again, it's difficult to say because we don't know who is kind of coming up with the ideas and who is just executing the ideas or the orders. To be honest, it could be. And I guess we'll see, because to be honest, I don't really know much about him. I just know that he's had that kind of he's had motorsport in his family, but apart from that, I've got no idea. I don't think many people know, to be honest.
For me, I think FIA are ahead of a lot of things with Formula E, Formula 2, Formula 3, World Rally Championship, all these other motorsports. And I think what he wants to do is that make everything as big as they can so that more profit can be overturned for the FIA altogether. Next talking point I want to talk about is, well, sponsors in F1. I mean, they've been, if you look at any car in the past, 10, 15, 20 years, is covered with just sponsors and sponsors. I mean, the Aston Martin livery was released today, and now they've got Aramco at the back of their rear wing. And Aramco has been in F1 for the past couple of years. You see them dotted around the track. I think they're going to try and do a Petronas when Mercedes signed Petronas. What do you think?
Wait 1 second. Cut this bit
Yeah,
out.
I got this.
I didn't even hear what you were saying. I'm sorry. I was trying to look something up so that I could do it. Wait 1 second. Sorry about this. I didn't even hear what you said. I'm just trying to look at old liveries to see how much sponsorships they have on them. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. So you start again. Just what were you saying about Petronas?
Aramco and Petronas, like when Mercedes signed Petronas,
Yeah.
and now they've had such a long deal. Petronas has kind of been like with Mercedes when they won and everything. All right, I'll start again. Start editing in 3, 2, 1. And so another talking point I want to talk about is sponsors in Formula One. Now, if you look about 15, 20 years ago, there hasn't been many sponsors like there are today. The Aston Martin livery got released today, and Aramco has signed a deal with Aston Martin for I don't know how many years, but you've seen that Aramco dotted around the track, little boards. But I think they're going to try and do a Petronas with Mercedes. Remember when in 2012, I think, when Schumacher came, Petronas signed a deal, and now Petronas is kind of linked with Mercedes. Do you think Aramco is trying to do that with Aston Martin and F1 as a whole?
Yeah, I think possibly. But I think also what's been a bit confusing is because of the sheer amount of sponsors, it's difficult to know who the number one sponsor is. And especially looking at the Aston Martin car from 2022, that it's covered in sponsors everywhere. And usually you can tell who the main sponsors are because it will be in bigger font. But if you look at I think it's Cognizant and the Aramco, they're quite, I don't know, they're quite similar size, and generally the size is kind of the indication of which one it is that's the main sponsor, and the other ones are smaller. So to be honest, I really don't know because they've got sponsors everywhere. It's covered.
Yeah, especially the amount of money sponsors are paying just for their name, just to be on the car. It may be just small print that you may not even see. it's just crazy to think that F1 has that sort of power, that they can exert over companies to say, you know what, for 200 mil, we'll put this on the car, and it may not even be like visible to the eye. But yeah, next point I want to talk about is well, really the 2021 FIA World Championship for F1. I mean, we've been talking about it for the past
Yeah.
episodes. Do you think they influenced it? Do you think there could be a bit of money going on?
Yes, definitely. I'll come on to that point, but one thing I will just say, just looking at the Aston Martin car now, I might be blind, but I've had a look at it, and I don't think I can see the BWT sponsor. So I think they may have dropped that, because I remember they had that from the days of Force India, then Racing Point, and then now. So I think they might have dropped that sponsorship, possibly making way for Aramco.
Could be. It's the harsh way, really, nowadays.
Yeah. So moving on to your point about 2021 championship, I think definitely. I think at the beginning of this season it wasn't rigged. I don't think there was anything bad going on. But I think when they realized that Verstappen was winning, maybe they felt that it would be too easy for Verstappen to win, or maybe they wanted Hamilton to win. To be honest, I don't know. But I think it's quite clear that during the kind of like the middle of the championship, I think they were a bit harsh on Verstappen, and they gave him penalties for things I think he didn't deserve. I think they also favoured Hamilton a bit, made it easier for him. And then I think they did that so that it would be such a close championship and that so many people would watch it. And also I think that, sorry, wait, cut this bit out. I can't remember. I was going to say something. I can't remember what I was going to say now. It's about 2021. No, I can't remember. I'll just say, what should I say? What do you think? Like they definitely rigged it at the beginning.
But they wanted to make it fair at the end.
Yeah, they want to make it fair at the end.
I think for me, I think all they wanted was a close fight. More viewers, then more people watching, commenting, liking
Yeah,
everything, making it a tight fight, especially in Saudi Arabia when they were both level on points going into the final race. I don't think that's ever
yeah,
happened before. Maybe once, maybe.
yeah,
But and then at the race, Hamilton, he was going to win anyway. If Latifi didn't crash, Hamilton was going to win, no shadow of a doubt in my eyes.
yeah,
But from a sporting point of view, it was disaster. The whole yellow flag, then safety car, then not letting cars allowed to overtake the leader, and then literally a
yeah,
lap later, after Red Bull told them to, then they can go. I think from a sporting point of view, from F1 as a whole, it's just a bit embarrassing. I
yeah.
don't
It
think
is.
I but from a commercial point of view, Liberty Media is, just shaking their hands, thinking money, money, money. They probably made so much, and now with Drive to Survive coming out, they're gonna make millions, millions.
Yes, and also um, I think that if it was any other race apart from the championship decider, I think it would have been a really dead race. It would have been an absolute disappointment and
Yeah,
just a waste of your time, to be honest. But I think because it was the final race and the decider, it became such a big thing. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it's really, really obvious and strange. And I also am quite surprised that nothing has happened about it and that they're still allowing stuff like this to happen.
well, I
I
mean,
think,
the
yeah,
FIA are saying that they're gonna investigate it. The whole
yeah, but hmm,
calamity.
nothing's gonna nothing's
But
gonna
I
happen though.
mean, if they say it's wrong, then they're just shooting themselves in the foot, really.
Exactly, that's what I said. I don't understand why Mercedes would go to the FIA and like talk to them about it to, consider what happened and stuff, and to try to, review what happened and to try to get an outcome that benefited them, because the FIA aren't just going to say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. You are the rightful like champion of 2021. They're not going to say that, obviously. So yeah, I don't think anything's going to happen.
I think also, I personally, I don't think it's this whole that race. I think it's the whole season that's been a bit, bit dodgy, with the decisions. And the worst thing is, I was watching the race and I was watching, on Sky F1, they have like the after show, checkered flag, that's what it's called, of the Grand Prix. And I remember seeing Toto Wolff and another Mercedes personnel with a lawyer at hand, ready to go, and Red Bull doing the same. It shows that it's like they were prepared for something, a bit dodgy to happen, which I think's pretty disastrous for F1.
And it's quite clear as well that that if people didn't know about the politics happening, then that's quite obvious that they know, but they want to do something about it.
Yeah, and for me, it brings the question: should Michael Massey be fired or step down? I think yes. I think it's time for him to go.
I don't think so. I think with everything, there's more to it than that. I think people said that he was doing a lot of jobs that he shouldn't have been doing. He had a lot on his plate, was very busy, and it may not have been his decision. Like you said earlier, Red Bull were kind of like convincing him to do that. And also, I think because of what happened earlier on in the championship, with giving Verstappen penalties that I don't think he deserved, and also favouring Hamilton, I think they realised at the end that they had to make it fair and they had to do something. But I think that just shows that they really messed it up, because when you're doing politics in such a complicated sport, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, I mean, there's been apparently leaks that FIA are planning to sack Michael Massey, which I think they have to in order to keep some dignity. FIA
I think so.
A respectful organization, but apparently someone called Peter Bayer, I think he's a European, and apparently he's set to take over as a race director for F1.
Okay.
Yeah. So now a talking point Karen suggested, everyone. Not one I want to do, but hey ho.
I'm excited for this one.
McLaren's financial position. I don't know a lot about it, but obviously Karen does, because he's a Ferrari fan and he wants to try and get every single kick in about McLaren. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say I've got an interest of cars outside of Formula One as well, like in terms of road cars and stuff. So it's something that I know about. But yeah, and I think it might be like a bit of a detour, this part of the podcast, but I think it links back to Formula One quite directly, because I mean, if there's no McLaren anymore because they go out of business, then there's no F1 team either. So I think it's quite important. Anyway, I think you'll be able to give an opinion as well, although you might not know as much. So basically what happened was there was leaked information, apparently from someone who worked at Audi, quite senior. And he basically said that Audi Volkswagen group were basically buying McLaren, and they were going to buy the F1 team, and they were going to buy McLaren supercars as well. McLaren then quickly came out and said, this isn't actually the case, but it was quite a sketchy thing that they said, and I think it's quite obvious that they are going to get bought by Volkswagen Audi. It's just that what the guy said was slightly inaccurate, so they technically could say that he was lying, but I think it's quite inevitable that they will, and lots of people think that they will be bought. And then there was some news as well about BMW buying McLaren supercars, but Audi buying the F1 part. I think, to be honest, there's so many things that line up to make it possible and to make it probable as well, because Porsche, Audi, and Volkswagen that whole group have wanted to get into Formula One for a long time.
Mm.
They want to get into motorsport. Obviously, they have the hypercar. They're going into hypercar, I believe, in 2023. They've already been dominating in LMP1, and they've also just entered in Formula E as well. So Porsche, have got quite a lot of, and they've actually got GT3, GTE, and GT2 classes as well. So they're in motorsport quite a lot. Obviously, they haven't really tried F1 yet, but I think as a company, as a group, they all want to get into F1. And I think to start a new Formula One team would be quite ambitious of them. So I think the best thing would be to go to an existing McLaren. And obviously they wouldn't keep the name, but I think it's likely that Volkswagen, Audi, or Porsche will make some F1 engines for the cars, because obviously they have quite a lot of engines that they could put in the car, and they have a lot of development. And also, I think McLaren have been very, very shy to kind of show that they're in a bad financial position, because they didn't really mention it that much, but it came out that McLaren had sold their big technology center. I can't remember how much it cost. I think it was like 200 million or something, or
See.
yeah, something like that. It was a huge amount. And basically they sold that and they're now leasing it because they don't have enough money. And I think their whole problem stems from their cars. So the problem with their cars is, they make too many cars. Their quality control is shocking. There have been people, like buyers, owners, that have had a car, and the same day they've bought it, it's literally been falling apart. Um, like the stitch and the seam between leather or Alcantara has literally come apart. Badges have fallen off, bodywork has fallen off, paint has faded, or it's got like this weird orange peel. And on a 150 plus £1,000 supercar, that's not really acceptable. And everyone knows that they catch fire as well, which is an added bonus of, you know, it's quite a interesting thing. You spend £150 to endanger yourself and almost die in a fire in the car that you paid £150,000 plus for. That's something I've never understood, but clearly some people understand that because some people are McLaren fans, but I'm not one of them, so I can't sympathize or empathize with that. Yeah, they don't sell parts to owners so that they can't get it serviced anywhere else. Um, the body parts don't fit them, so they have to put spacers on them, which probably explains why they fall apart. McLaren laid off lots of people and then started hiring people off the streets who basically didn't have um, any knowledge of anything. Their latest supercar, the Atura, is basically disappeared. No one knows what's happening to it. Um, yeah, and then McLaren, uh, check this. So I was saying about how you pay 150 grand plus to get, caught in a fire, but not only that, McLaren are suing owners for the burning of their car. They're like, you've obviously done something to the car, you've modified it illegally, and now you've given us a bad name because you've done that. So, I mean, I don't have any sympathy for McLaren because they're now trying to sue their owners that have spent money on the brand, and instead of apologizing for it and sorting the car out, they've decided to sue them over that. I mean, what do you think about this? It's pretty crazy, if you ask me.
Well, for me, I think when Lando Norris wins the 2022 F1 World Championship, all McLaren's problems are going to go away.
I'm gonna just pretend you didn't say that because honestly, I don't even know if they'll last a couple years. I mean, the thing is, if no one buys them, they'll be out of business, 100%. They make too many cars. The customer service is awful. Um, they, they have that brand model of just making more and more and more. But then, if they don't get customers that come back and buy more cars, who's going to buy them? So, I don't think they really understand what they're doing here, and I think they're likely to go out of business. You know, their McLaren F1, I think, I'm actually not sure when the McLaren F1, as in the McLaren F1 road car, I think it came out 1990 something. Let me just check. Yeah, so the McLaren F1 road car was basically a homologation special of their McLaren F1 LM car, and it came out in 1992 and basically finished in 1998. The production, there are only 106 cars ever made, designed by Gordon Murray, and basically since then they have not made supercars until the MP4 12C, which came out in 2011, I'm going to say. So yeah, I mean, I think they've really got problems coming their way, and I think that'll be interesting to see what happens in F1 because obviously the two companies are linked, and if one goes down, the other one goes down. So I think that's interesting. But also, I think it's interesting. McLaren have always shown an interest in Formula One because even when they've not been making road cars, they've always been in F1. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the problem with McLaren as a company is that compared to Mercedes and Alfa Romeo, you're going to see more Mercedes and Alfa Romeos on the road than you are going to see McLarens. And when you have that money, you're going to buy a Ferrari or Lamborghini, right? You're not going to go from McLaren. I think
Yeah,
the problem with McLaren overall, and it hurts to say as an F1 fan, if they don't have enough money, I don't see where they're going to get that money from. You know,
yeah,
F1 is a money, you have to put money into that sport to get, new engines, new chassis, new aerodynamics, etc. And for me, I can see if they do well this season, I can see a recovery from McLaren as a whole for F1. Uh, but I mean, if you look at Mercedes, they've got so much money. I don't know how McLaren are going to cope with that. Coming from a neutral and realistic point of view, but in F1, you never know. That McLaren could find something, a loophole with the 2022, aerodynamics, and maybe win it all. But yeah, talk about
yeah,
Porsche and BMW and Audi and Volkswagen, that car brand group coming into F1.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I, I
sorry,
could
just
I could definitely see Porsche coming into
yeah,
F1. BMW's already had a spell in F1, so I
yeah,
think they're less likely to come in. But Porsche definitely. I think they've got the money,
yeah.
they've got the facilities, they've got the engine. I think I, as a McLaren fan, I wouldn't mind seeing a Porsche McLaren F1 team. Imagine that.
Well, I would because I like Porsche, but I don't like McLaren.
Then what team would you support? Ferrari still?
Yeah, yeah, of course. He's always Ferrari. There's no question about that. But I love Porsche as well. But I don't think, yeah, I wouldn't like to see that. But I don't think they would keep the McLaren name. Actually, thinking about it, I don't think they would keep that because, um, why would they? They're promoting something that they don't need to promote because McLaren won't exist technically anymore
But I
because
mean,
they're owned by
sorry,
someone else.
but with if Porsche or BMW Audi do buy Mercedes, McLaren, sorry,
Yeah,
Mercedes they're gonna lose quite a lot of money because McLaren are buying their engines at the moment, so that could be a bad thing for Mercedes. But yeah, there's also talks about Alfa Romeo getting bought by Audi or BMW. And I could definitely see that coming. I don't think Alfa Romeo have the facilities for F1. So yeah,
yeah, but remember Alfa Romeo is part of the um is part of the Ferrari,
Ferrari Group.
Maserati, Fiat group, and Jeep and Dodge, and believe me, they've got stacks of money.
Then
So
why
I don't think
why are they
that's a
doing well
problem.
in F1?
Well, because Ferrari are their main team, aren't they? So they're prioritizing them, and if I'm honest, they're probably only having a second F1 team. Well, one to stay um to stay as a leading F1 team because let's be honest, as a leading F1 team, you need to own more than one F1 team. So, you've got to have a junior team and also for money because if they're going to spend lots of money on Ferrari, they need to get it from somewhere.
That was
Yeah, so
very
I
true.
think, but also just so you know, BMW isn't a part of the same group as Volkswagen Audi. So BMW, there was rumors that they were going to buy the supercar part of McLaren, and that Volkswagen Audi were going to buy the F1 part. But then at the same time, I don't think BMW will buy any of it. I think Volkswagen Audi will buy all of it, including the road cars, because I think that was a bit of a lie, that one. But it was a
How,
rumor. It was a rumor, but I don't think it will happen.
how much money do you think Volkswagen has then?
They have tons. They have absolute tons. Oh, I remember most of the brands that Volkswagen have, but I'll just look up Volkswagen Group, see what brand, because I know Audi, Lamborghini,
Hmm.
Bentley, Bugatti. Yeah, so here it is. So they've got Porsche, which I knew about, Audi, I knew about, Skoda, I knew about, Seat, Bentley, Bugatti, Volkswagen, obviously themselves, Lamborghini, Scania, which makes big lorries, and Ducati, which makes motorbikes, and MAN, which again makes uh, lorries. So yeah, they're loaded. They've got, I mean, essentially, Bugatti make the fastest car in the world. Lamborghini, very historic supercar. They've got Bentley, they've got classic cars, they've got Porsche. So I mean, and Audi. They've got so many brands. I think they're the biggest group of any other car. They're bigger than the Ferrari Fiat group. So
Yeah, I mean, I googled it, and their net worth is 500 billion euros, which is a lot. I don't know
yeah.
why they wouldn't just make themselves make their own team. Volkswagen racing team. That would be
Well,
sick because
because well, yeah, I think they will, but I think they'll rebrand. I think they'll rebrand it a bit like what happened with Racing Point, Aston Martin, Braun GP, and Mercedes. Um, Ferrari and nah, I'm joking. Ferrari have never
very
changed,
funny,
and
very
remember
funny.
that for the rest of your life. Ferrari have never changed. Uh, yeah, so I think they'll just rebrand it. To be honest, I don't think they need to start because it pains me to say this, but McLaren's actually decent Formula One cars, so I don't think, yeah, I think it'll be easier if they just take over McLaren and rebrand it.
I mean, if let's say Volkswagen do bring in another team, completely different team, that would be great for F1 because then you get 22 drivers on the grid, and the amount of young talent nowadays, that's another thing about F1, paid drivers. There's so much young talent.
Mm.
Oscar Piastri, the Formula 2 world champion, he's sitting on the sofa right now thinking, how come Guan Yu Zhou has taken my spot? It's just
I know
embarrassing.
that is ridiculous. I actually feel really bad for him, and he's not the only one either. There have been so many people
Nick
in
De
the same
Vries.
position that have been either winning the championship of Formula 2 or either being really high up there, and people lower down will get into Formula 1. Like, it's just ridiculous. And that never used to happen before. And that's why I prefer old F1. I think a lot of people don't understand what I mean. They're just like, well, times have changed, but times may have changed, but it's still there's still a big difference. And to be honest, it's definitely become worse than what it was. Because, I mean, you look at Formula One, it's kind of become worse in every aspect. I still like it, obviously, but their cars used to be V12, V10, V8, which sounded amazing. They were so much harder to drive. They were much lighter, so they had none of these electronics, none of these driver aids. They even used to be manuals. It was really, really challenging for the driver. I remember there was a stat about Jim Clark, who I believe is actually one of the best F1 drivers ever. They said that his brakes failed, and that he was leading the race, and he had to complete something like 12 laps, um, whilst having to, whilst having no brakes. So he basically had to have one hand on the steering wheel, one hand on the gearbox, and he just used to have to shift down as much as he could to slow the car down. And that's literally what he did. And I remember one time, he also had another problem, and he won by something like 12 minutes. He won the race by like 12 minutes, and he had a problem with his car. And I think that just shows that the driver talent was much, much higher with the old cars, because they knew how to control the cars properly. They knew how to drive a proper car, rather than, it's literally becoming a video game now. And in, they have that like thing of like the history of Formula One, and they
Yeah.
show like the future of F1. In 2025, mark my words, there'll be self-driving Formula One cars. I mean, how much easier can you make it? The 2022 cars are even easier to drive than the old style cars. Well, I say old, I mean like 2021 to 2014. And yeah, the cars were much harder to drive before that. And yeah, I honestly, I don't know what to say about where Formula One is going. I think it's pretty obvious. And also, some of the old Formula One cars were V8 twin turbochargers as well, and they had tons of lag as well. So you would just like wait for the boost to build, and then it will literally just kick in, and it will snap the car sideways, and then you need to try and recover it, and then try and recover it again, and then you need to try and change gear manually with a manual gearbox, put in the clutch, and then you also need to factor in when the boost is going to come in. You need to know when the boost is going to come in. And if you're going around a corner with the boost coming in, then you're stuffed. And I think having all of those things in your mind, then trying to actually beat lots of other drivers as well, also trying to make sure that you don't die, because the old cars were really hard to drive and they were so unsafe as well. I think they had quite a lot on their plate, and I think that just shows the talent of them, and also how it was more entertaining. I think now F1 are making up for entertainment, and they're just rigging the results like they did in 2021, just because it's getting more boring.
Yeah, I can see how yeah, the older cars are harder to drive. I mean, I remember 2020 Belgian Grand Prix qualifying, and I remember Hamilton going on the fastest lap for Q3, a proper pushing lap. And I remember, P1, where you really, in most cars, you have to brake, right?
Yeah,
He took it flat out, and I remember Martin Brundle saying that's probably the most grippiest car I've ever seen in my life. You know, and but then it also shows as we come along in time, that the engineering and the creativity and the innovation with F1 has changed a lot. I mean, in the 1950s, 1960s, there wasn't much creativity and innovation, with aerodynamics, engines and stuff. Most of them were the same cars, but nowadays it shows that F1 really has two sides, with the driver and the team making and designing the car. So some could see like that is a problem, but I think that is also quite good, shows
I
that
don't think
F1
so.
is a very creative and innovative sport.
Well, you could be creative in many other ways as well, but making a car easier to drive, I wouldn't say necessarily is creative. And if you look at videos of Ayrton Senna like driving around Monaco, for example, it's such a low speed circuit compared to a lot of circuits. You can't really get up to a high speed. But if you watch the old videos of him driving, literally every second of it is him trying to counter oversteer. Literally the whole race, that is his only problem, is trying to overcome oversteer, is trying to counter it. And that's something modern F1 drivers just won't understand. And I think it's quite interesting when you see modern F1 drivers. They might be good at driving Formula One cars and they might get good times, but there are some videos of them driving different cars and different sports, and those are much harder to drive than Formula One cars, and they don't have a clue. And the old F1 drivers can, because they actually know how to drive properly. It's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of like comparing a video game, like a video game player to an actual car driver. You know, is two different things. And F1 is not is rather than being a sport, is turning into a reality TV show. It is literally, because they're rigging what happens, so it's as fake as Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and then it's honestly, it's beyond me. I don't know where they're going with this. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Drive to Survive could be viewed as a reality TV show, on Netflix, but that's going to happen regardless nowadays. Media is so important in the world. Social media, TV media is so important in the world that everyone wants to be in it and everyone wants to take part in media. So regardless of what sport or anything you do, it all relates to media. Um, but yeah, I think F1 will change in the future even more if there's a new thing to do, they will change it to be like it, like social media now. They're all over it. Everyone's all over it. Like we're doing this podcast, we're gonna put it on YouTube so people can watch it. And
Yeah.
I mean in the 1990s, you wouldn't be able to do that, but that's just the world changing. You're gonna have to adapt regardless of what sport you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, media coverage is one thing, but then the actual um rigging it is something different. Like, I understand Drive to Survive fine, they want to make money from it. I understand them posting YouTube videos, that's fine. But then at least leave the actual, when you're on the track, you're on the track. You're by yourself. It's down to the driver and the team. But don't interfere with that. You can interfere with, after the race and stuff, what happens afterwards, in the pits and stuff, but don't control that as well, is what I would say, and they can still make more money if they want to. Everyone knows that F1 used to be on like Channel 4, and I think he used to be on BBC before that, and
Yeah.
possibly ITV as well. So, and obviously that's changed as well. And so they want even more money. And it's not even cheap either. I think it's like £20 a month,
Hmm.
which I
Yeah,
think
it's a lot of
if I'm
money.
if I'm right in saying that's more than Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus,
Yeah, Sky
anything.
are they want just them to be the broadcaster for UK, which is probably the main target for F1. And so they're going to charge ridiculous prices just to watch. Even in like June, July when they have their season break, they still charge you for it. And then they
Yeah, yeah, of course. And then they put like these like crappy videos up about like the history of F1, that a lot of them is nonsense, and it's really boring as well. So, but yeah,
maybe
at least
it
they
also
try.
it also brings the question: does the media have too much control in sports nowadays? That's a fair point.
Yeah, obviously, 100% they do. Um, you know, um, I think every every I think every sponsor kind of has an objective. Not only do they want to become more famous and they want people to buy their brand because of the F1 team, but also I think they want a more specific objective. Like they want something out of the drivers, whether it be adverts or promotions or whatever it is. And another little touch that I noticed was when I went to Mercedes World for a driving experience. I don't know if you've heard of Ineos, but they're like that big
Yeah.
sponsor that
Mm,
Mercedes have on the top of their roof
yeah.
scoop with the purple, whatever it is. Um, and obviously because of COVID, we have to sanitize everything. So when I went into the car that I drove, they had Ineos hand sanitizer in the car. They had like a bottle of it. And I think like little things like that is just like so much product placement, like to the point that hand sanitizer is like Ineos hand sanitizer. And it's not just like it was a coincidence, because every car had Ineos hand sanitizer there. And they force you to use it because they say because of COVID you have to use it. When you get out of the car, you have to use it as well. So, and to be honest, it works. Like if you own a Mercedes, or you're a Mercedes fan, you're probably going to buy that hand sanitizer, not because it's better than the other ones, but just because you're supporting the company, is what people probably think.
The final point we're going to be talking about today is one that's been in the news for the past couple of years, especially in 2020. Racism in sport and particularly F1. Lewis Hamilton, the only black or mixed race driver to be ever in Formula One. Actually, I think there was one more before him, just an American driver. The Sky F1 had a like little thing about him. But yeah, racism in F1. I mean, last season, 2020, and this season, taking the knee and Black Lives Matter, shirts and stuff. But this season it's been scrapped. F1 has said that drivers do not have to do any of that. And do you think that they're not doing enough for racism?
No, I don't, to be honest, I don't see how Formula One can do that much, to be honest. I know that at one point during lockdown, they kind of all, I think it was because of what happened in America with racism. A lot of F1 team posted stuff about racism and Black Lives Matter and stuff. But to be honest, I don't think they can do much. If I'm honest, I mean, I think you know more about Formula 2 than me because I'm not too up to date with Formula 2, but how many black F2 drivers are there?
I don't think there are any black F2 drivers, but I know there is
Yeah.
an Indian F2 driver actually.
Yeah, so that's what I mean.
Tarawa.
Like that, yeah, so that's what I basically was talking about. So I don't think F1 can do much. I think actually it is Formula 2 that could possibly do more. Formula 3, Formula Ford, Formula Renault, karting maybe. I think maybe they could do more, but I think because F1 is right at the top, all they do is accept the drivers from Formula 2. So if they're not in Formula 2 in the first place, they're not just going to pick a Formula 4 driver and say, yeah, come to F1. So I think it's got to happen there. And also, I think it's a good point because I think what they did to Hamilton's car, the Mercedes, painting it black, like, I'm sorry, how is that going to, like, what has that got to do with Black Lives Matter? Because it's the color of a car. You're painting a car black, and that apparently is helping Black Lives Matter or it supports. Like, I don't know what so you're telling me painting a physical object, a Formula One car, painting a piece of metal in a black color makes people who are racist stop racism. Like, it doesn't make any sense. How is that going to support people who suffer from racism or who, or people who are racist? How is that going to stop them? It doesn't make any difference. Putting a comment on Twitter, supporting the Black Lives Matter, organization, I think is a much better thing to do. And I think if lots of people knew about the car being black for that reason, then it would be slightly different. But I don't think many people know that car is that for that reason. It doesn't say it on the car. So
I think what Mercedes tried to do was that when people look at the car, they think, oh, Mercedes normally the silver arrows. Why did they paint it black? And then Mercedes would be like, for Black Lives Matter. And so then, in years and years later, they'll be thinking, we did this for Black Lives Matter. It was such a big movement, and then people would say, oh, okay, fine, then racism is a big thing still, and now and anyway, also they did the Lewis Hamilton Foundation. Well, Lewis did it himself, which helps young black racers, propel themselves to Formula One. So I think they've done enough, but I think there still could be more to be done in F1 and more, in the junior series, especially. Anyway, that's going to be the end of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed. Karen, do you have anything else to say?
yeah, so thanks everyone for watching our previous videos and subscribing. If we could continue to get more views and likes, that'd be much appreciated. And yeah, we should be coming out with videos every week, hopefully on a Sunday or Saturday. So yeah, cheers guys.
Thanks for the support. It's been incredible over the past couple of weeks. But yeah, thank you and goodbye.